The thing that we're going to talk about today is the Tricorder replica from the Wand company. Now, a bit of history on this. Back in 2016, I bought their Star Trek replica communicator. It wasn't just a replica though, it had some Bluetooth functionality and interesting little features, sound samples, that kind of thing. Made a video about it, and then a few years after that, I think it was 2021, they said they were going to do the Tricorder from Star Trek, the original series, the 1960s one. So I thought, I'll sign up for information on that, because they hadn't finalised what it was going to be like at that point. So you could sign up, email, newsletter thing, time to time, they'd tell you about the progress of it. That was 2021. Only a few months later, I'd deactivated that email account. I'd moved to a different provider. So I'd forgotten all about it until just recently, when they got in touch and said, do I want one? Because someone who'd seen my video review of the communicator said that they bought one as a result and they should send me one of their new tricorders. So they've sent me one, and here it is. Well, here's the box containing it. I haven't opened it yet, and I'm trying to keep this whole thing a bit of a mystery for myself, because I could now go on their website and read up all about it, find out what features are on it, but I don't want to do that. I want to keep it a bit of a surprise, a bit like a present from days gone by. Nowadays, everything is so much about, like, you get information about every product before you get it. You get photos, say like a Nintendo Switch 2. You know all about it. It's not even out yet. I don't like that. I like to have a bit of a surprise with things. So I could watch other video reviews. There's other ones out there, but I'm not doing that. I want to find out for myself what this does, other than look like a really cool prop replica, because the first one was very authentic to the prop used in the series, and yet it was kind of useful as well. You could use it as with your phone, and you could keep your phone in your pocket and make calls with it. I'll put a link to that original video in the description, but I don't think you can get that one anymore. But this one, I'm not too sure. I think they're having a bit of trouble fulfilling orders at the moment. There's a bit of a delay, so I'm very lucky to get hold of this one. Let's open it up and have a good look. Now, I've just seen that this says it contains mini Great Ball. 8 of them. Let's hope it doesn't. Yep, there we go. So that must be the same size as a load of balls. Yeah, nice glossy box, but let's get inside and have a look at the thing itself. Okay, so inside the box were the tricorder in its leatherette carrying case, a magnetic display stand, the instructions, and a set of multicoloured data discs. Each one of these pleasingly chunky aluminium edged discs activates a different function in the tricorder. Now, that case is well made and provides good protection for the device, but I suspect for many people it'd get very little use, as this is a device that you want to keep on display. Now, I think they've done a really good job of making that LCD look like a CRT, complete with all the reflections that entails. For some reason, mine came supplied with lots of images of an old bald bloke hiding behind a camera. Of course, it's rechargeable via USB-C, and on the front you'll find 2 compartments, which are held shut with magnets. The data discs go in the top section, and the bottom one holds a box containing a braided charging lead and some plastic dividers. The section that holds the data discs is split into 8 segments, each of which holds that individual disc in place and then can spring it out to enable each disc to be extracted. Now, the first job with this is to charge it up, and that gave me the opportunity to read through the detailed instruction sheet. The first bit of information that this revealed that I'd previously missed was that each of those data discs has its function on the edge for easy identification, so I set about spinning those around. I found I got the orientation disc the wrong way up. Okay, with that done and the device charged, the first job after turning it on was to set the time and date. Now, it has a very intuitive interface with coloured options relating to the coloured lights above each control. The outer 2 of these controls, they're just buttons, while the middle one is a 4-way directional controller with a push button function for making selections. Now, I took this opportunity to insert those plastic dividers into that bottom compartment, and once those were installed, it's clear that they're intended to hold the medical scanner prop, although at present the Wand company hasn't announced they're making one. Now, the weighted magnetic base holds the device stable for display purposes, and there is a prop display function that's intended to resemble the way the prop was most commonly seen in the show. That has a grey screen and blue lights, and the familiar sound effect can also be activated here too. Now, to enable each function, either the appropriate data disk needs to be inserted in the rightmost position, or if that's too much hassle, then each of the functions can be accessed from a menu in the settings, and this gives access to the additional engineering menu as well, which brings up a test screen. Now, I'm going to go through some of the features. So, planets lets you look at information on various planets. And radiation brings up a display that reacts to electromagnetic radiation. And the logs function is one of the more comprehensive ones. It enables you to listen to the original audio from every captain's log that was played in the series.
Captain's log, stardate 5710.9. Mr. Spock has remained in accelerated time so that he might effect repairs to the ship more rapidly.
Okay, now as well as the recordings from the TV show, we can make our own recordings onto this in these 8 positions here. We can record up to 30 seconds in each one. There is a bit of an issue though. There's quite a lot of background noise, and that's being picked up from this mechanism here. If I go into log position number 1 to record something, you'll see we've got this VU meter of sorts along the bottom of the screen. And if I stop talking for a second, you'll see that it doesn't go right down to the bottom as you'd expect. It remains quite high in the green section. And that indicates that it's picking up this internal mechanism's noise. So let us press record and we'll see what that sounds like. Okay, so I'm recording now. I've got the options on the screen to pause and stop and then listen back to what I've recorded. Notice at the top there, the star date, that's today's date, the 20th of May 2025 at the time I'm recording this. So let's now stop this one and have a listen back to it and just hear for the noise that it's picked up from its own internal mechanism. Okay, so I'm recording now. I've got the options on the screen to pause and stop and then listen back to what I've recorded. Notice at the top there, the star date, that's today's date. Okay, so that's less than ideal. Let's see if we can turn this mechanism off. Now, there are various settings for these things, so let's go into the settings. There we go, that's stopped moving now. Okay, so I've started recording, and hopefully this time it's going to sound an awful lot better than it did on the last try. Okay, so I've started recording, and hopefully this time it's going to sound an awful lot better than it did on the last try. Although I have to say that I feel this effect is so nicely done, I think it's something I definitely want to leave switched on whenever I wasn't recording anything. Now, you can personalise your device with a name which is then displayed in the bottom left corner of the screen, but moving on to some other functions, orientation, that's a compass of sorts onto which you can select a waypoint, and then along the bottom of the screen it gives you arrows left and right to get you back on course. The archive, that contains a couple of short clips and then a small selection of stills. My favourite amongst these, though, is a nice little looping oscilloscope type display, which I think looks appropriate on this screen, and I'll show it here to demonstrate that when you close the compartments, the device goes into standby, but opening them up again, it carries on from where it last left off. You don't have to turn it on and wait for the thing to boot up every time, which would be good if you were carrying this around a show and you wanted to pretend it was working. The atmosphere disk, well, that gives you some atmospheric stats. And then the status disk, well, that brings up a couple of appropriate displays, one for the Tricorder and one for the Enterprise. Inserting this audio disc activates a spectrum analyzer. And this has a couple of different display options. You can see here at the top left it says Spectra, and that's the mode we're looking at the moment. If we select the other one, top right it says Oscilloscope, and then if we press the mode button a further time, we get both of them displayed together. Looking through the service menu shows that this is capable of receiving updates via USB. I don't know if it'll ever get any, but there is also mention of an SD card reader. So it seems likely that it's only a matter of time before someone gets one of these and manages to get it running Doom. Of course, I briefly connected mine up via USB, but it didn't do anything. Now, I was also tempted to open the rear compartment due to the very inviting looking single screw that held this in place, and I was glad to see that inside was an easily replaceable 18650 battery, as well as a nice little Easter egg of sorts. Now finally, one thing I found in amongst those test menus was a nice bright green screen display, which is just begging to be replaced with a cheap effect like this. So there you go. A replica prop with fantastic attention to detail. Apparently they scanned the last surviving tricorder prop from the TV show to get this as authentic as possible, but then they added in some additional functionality to make it as interesting as possible to a collector. Now, after playing around with this for a few hours, I do have a few observations. The first one is I would have preferred it if it had a louder speaker output. I think it could have also benefited from this top section being a little bit less floppy, if it had more resistance in its movement. As it is, when you push the buttons, the whole thing shifts as well. But you quickly get used to the idea of holding this with one hand whilst operating it with the other. But with regard to those buttons and controls, I understand that they have to be a certain size to fit in with the prop from the show. However, I do find them a little bit tough to press at times, not just because of the proximity of them to one another, but they seem to be requiring a little bit more pressure to activate than I would have expected. My one main takeaway from this, though, is that I wish I'd have found a way to give this additional functionality in the real world, beyond just being a clock with a rather small display. The things that it does do, whilst they're fun diversions, things to show your friends, they're not the kind of thing that you'd come back to. For this to remain permanently powered up and sitting on my desk, it would have to do more. As an example, the communicator replica that I featured back in 2016, once that was connected up with your smartphone via Bluetooth, it could be used as a hands-free speakerphone. Now, whilst I doubt very many people used it as such, at least the option was there. I think this tricorder could have benefited from that kind of connectivity with a smartphone, and then perhaps it could have used the screen to display the weather or your notifications, or failing everything else, it could have been yet another smart speaker. But with all that said, the Wand Company have achieved what they set out to do, which was to create a really authentic looking prop, the kind of thing that a cosplayer would be very proud to take along with them to a convention. Now, since I didn't pay for mine, I had no idea how much these things cost. Back when I expressed an interest in this product all those years ago, they hadn't set a price. And then, of course, remember, this one is a freebie that was sent to me. So I went looking online to see how much these go for. Well, the first batch went out at $350 a piece. Now, I just want to be clear, I'm not on any kind of commission. There's no affiliate links. There's no way to track this video back to potential sales or any of that kind of business. They haven't paid me to make this video. All they did was send this to me in the post, and I did the video because I think it was kind of implied I was supposed to, although they never even asked for that. Maybe they were just sending it as a gift, but I still would have shown it to you anyway because I think it's an interesting device. And remember, all those years ago, I did sign up for extra information on it. No affiliate links in the video description. Search for it yourself. The Wand Company Tricorder. I think you can find it. It'll be on one of those websites that starts with www. Anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.